tough race 1, while Nicolo Biliga etches his name into TT Circuit Assen folklore with a dominant display, and with his 4th victory in 7 races, he will be looking to take the treble here today. Hello and a very warm welcome, or should I just say welcome, because warm is not the word of the day, because with the images you see, the rain is falling and it's a very cold morning. Taking you through the warm-up session is Liam Hodgins and Steve English. And Steve, this is a session depending on the weather that could be either very interesting or completely useless.
Yeah, it was one of those mornings where it's not a warm welcome, it's a wet welcome to TT Circuit Assen, unfortunately, today. But for the teams, there's now a challenge because you've got a 10-minute warm-up session. We've got 2 hours before the Super Pole race. Is it going to be wet for the Super Pole race? Is it going to be drying conditions? Is it going to be mixed? And what are you going to do out there? For the riders, is it wet enough to warrant going out right now? And it looks like it probably is. So for the riders, this 10-minute session becomes an exploratory session to be able to understand what the grip level is. You can see from these shots, down the pit straight is more than wet enough to be able to go out. So I would imagine that most riders will go out and do 5 or 6 laps just to be able to understand what the wet conditions are like.
Yeah, looking at some of the weather apps, they're telling us completely different things. Some are saying that maybe the rain might stop around about 10 o'clock in the morning, some just saying before the Super Pole race, some saying at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So you don't really know here at Assen when the rain could be stopping, what the weather will do. It's a completely different climate here to anywhere else. It's a very local climate as well. We just spoke about Nicolo Biliga at the top of the show, and a rider that went from frustration to very happy yesterday because he was held up in his fastest lap in Super Pole yesterday from Toprak Razgatlioglu and Axel Bassani. They incurred a penalty, a place drop on the grid, but Nicolo Biliga said in Park Fermi he did use that frustration to push himself even higher, and with a dominant display for victory number 4. We see Toprak here, and he's got absolutely no intention to go out there today. And it was interesting what he said to our colleague Ilaria yesterday in the media debriefs, that he hasn't tried the BMW since he became world champion. So maybe a couple of laps out there would be beneficial for him, but maybe he's thinking that when the Super Pole race comes along, he might be looking at a different app to we are, and it'll be completely dry.
Yeah, it's 2 hours until then, and Van der Mark down there as well. And Mikey, we know how good he is in the wet conditions, and Mikey, he's not going out either. So 10-minute session, we'll see who does go out there. Locatelli's in his leathers, so at least there's a prospect that he'll be out there.
But look at Paul Denning, the team manager. He's looking very chilled and relaxed, and it doesn't look like there might be any action coming from the Pata Yamaha box of Locatelli. But we'll have to wait and see. And it's a very cold morning, so you've got to say a very brave day to the fans. They're already out in their droves on the main grandstand just opposite our commentary box window. But Alvaro Bautista, he needs some mileage in this weekend. A crash for him yesterday took out an unexpected Sam Lowes in that, and Sam, I think, was quite lucky not to be tangled up in the bike of Bautista and his. But seeing Sam last night as we were leaving the circuit, he was still in good spirits despite the crash yesterday. Yeah,
it's a bit unfortunate for Sam, but the pole position and running up in those lead positions, that's what gives you a lot of confidence, and we'll see what he can do today.
Talking of Axel Bassani earlier on at the top of the show, 7th place start for him yesterday, but a very good Super Pole for Axel Bassani before he incurred that penalty. And he was showing strong towards the end of the race, battling inside the top 10, well inside the top 10 before coming together late on in the race. So Axel Bassani, he's a rider that's getting himself ready, as some of the fans of the hearty fans here in the Netherlands, and an umbrella is all they need, but some shorts as well, so you don't know whether it's going to be a winter's day or a summer's day here today. But this fan here on screen has got himself covered for all eventualities here, as we hear the bikes heading out onto the circuit, and Alex Lowes is the rider leading them out, along with Scott Redding, Tito Rabat on the 53 just behind them. So Alex Lowes is making his way out onto the track.
Yeah, and you can see there just how wet it is for the riders as they make their way around, and just important to be able to go out there and see where the rivers are. Assen's a very unique circuit because it's very heavily cambered out there, and just where the riders are going in now into the northern loop, it's very positively cambered into there, so the water pools down into the right hand side, right on the apex, so you have to understand where you can really go out in the racetrack.
We have seen some iconic wet races here at the TT Circuit Assen. I think I remember back to the 2006 races when we had 2 races on the Sunday, like we do now, but there wasn't 3 in the same weekend, and it was Andrew Pitt and Chris Walker taking their sole victories here in World Superbikes in 2006, which was the first of what we now call the iconic layout of the circuit. Well, the modern circuit anyway. Maybe not so iconic compared to the old northern look we used to have prior to 2006, but the modern circuit still offers up incredible racing and is iconic in itself. Here is Sam Lowes on the number 14 Elf Mark VDS Racing Team Ducati. Has made in pole position. He took that yesterday in incredible circumstances. He was running in 3rd before, unfortunately, he was taken out at that corner they were just going through with Scott Redding and Tito Rabat, the turn 9, the Bolt. So, unfortunately, Alvaro Bautista just running a little bit deep into the Bolt yesterday, and heard Sam in his pit box yesterday after he came in after the incident, and he just said Alvaro was never making the corner, so I don't know what he's trying. So, yeah, it's a shame Sam Lowes didn't get to convert his pole position into a first podium, but in the media centre yesterday, they both shared a hug. So they've all made up, which is good to see, and hopefully there'll be no more incidents for Sam or Bautista or anybody in this Sunday's action. We're looking at Xavi Vierge on screen as he goes up to Logomir on his first lap of the session. He's had quite a difficult weekend, especially on Friday, as Xavi Vierge. 2 bike stoppages in FP1. We were told by Jose Esquimez it was a technical problem, which is universal for, we don't really want to speak to you and tell you what it is, but Xavi Vierge there, he still managed to get some good laps under his belt throughout the weekend, as we've seen. Ico Lecona, who's had quite a strong weekend so far. Yeah, you can see just how heavy the rain has been overnight as well, and for the riders now, this is where they have to be thinking in terms of how drivers will get in 2 hours time. We're going to have Super Sport 300s and WCR warm-ups as well, but they're all 10-minute sessions, so we'll have a bit of running, but if it keeps raining or if it doesn't rain too heavily between now and the Super Bowl session, it could get interesting because Assen is a place that dries quite quickly. The track surface, there's a lot of grip, but you've got a lot of rain that needs to find a way to drain, and obviously in the Netherlands they're used to being able to figuring drainage out, but there's a lot of rain that has to move, so looks like it will be a wet Super Bowl race. Yeah, it looks like it will. It looks like it's getting even heavier potentially out there on circuit, and we left our hotel room this morning. It just started drizzling ever so slightly, but as we got to the circuit it started getting heavier. That's where there's a few riders that always go quite well in the wet. We just saw a quick glimpse there of Jason O'Halloran. He is actually a good wet weather rider from his time in BSB. He was always able to be very strong in wet conditions, so maybe he's able to spring a bit of a surprise if we end up with a wet race. And Garrett Gerloff's another one that we've seen very competitive in the wet weather conditions. However, sometimes he pushes the limits a little bit too much, and might go down as we've seen in Magna Cure last year. But Garrett Gerloff is a rider to watch in the Super Pole race if it remains to be wet. Maybe Remy Gardner could spring a surprise. He got his sole podium in World Superbikes here last year, and a rider that doesn't mind pushing the boundaries if he has to. It's a very Aussie grit mentality Remy Gardner has, and pushing the boundaries he has into turn 1, going through the gravel trap there, just maybe pushing a little bit, just finding where the grip might be in these wet conditions, and sometimes that's what you've got to do. Maybe just push it a little bit, but not too far over the edge, just to find out where the grip is, where it isn't, and if you can gather it all up, even if you run off track, at least you know for the next lap and maybe for the race, and especially for turn 1 at the start of the race, you'll know that you can maybe brake a little bit later, maybe you have to brake a little bit earlier, so, and your angle you tip into the corner so you don't tuck the front. So nothing to worry about for any Remy Gardner fans at the time being. Sam Lowes here, your pole setter yesterday, and of course for the Super Pole race later on today in just under 2 hours time. And Sam Lowes, he might be relishing these wet conditions, even though he did take pole position yesterday in the dry. He wasn't able to go with Nicolo Bulliga, and he was hanging on to Andrea Locatelli yesterday as well, but for Sam Lowes, he could see this as maybe a chance for him to pick up his first podium in World Superbikes. Yeah, for Sam, I think in the dry conditions for a Super Pole race, he would have felt pretty confident out there. Wet conditions always a little bit more of a lottery. We just catch up with Scott Redding now, always a strong rider in the wet conditions himself, and Michael van der Mark, 2 of the bigger riders with a bit more leverage on the bike, and they've always been very strong in the wet conditions. You can see there for Scott a few little changes for him this weekend, and different leathers as well. So for Redding, he's trying to just get himself more and more comfortable out there, and Portimao was a very tough weekend for him, but at least this weekend he's back at a track that he prefers to Portimao. It has been tough for him,
but maybe the wet conditions offer him the chance just to light it up this morning.
Yeah, Scott is still getting used to the Ducati. He spent 3 seasons on the BMW, so it'd be good to see Scott get a good result here this weekend after a very promising opening start to the season. As we look at Michael van der Mark and Toprak Razgat Lioglu, and maybe Mikey, the local hero, he's maybe told Toprak, like, you know what, we don't need to go out, we know what the conditions are going to be like, and in 2 hours time he might just be like, it'll be dry. As you said earlier on, it could be, it drains very quickly here, but Mikey might be the best person to know what will happen here.
It's one of those strange ones where if you go out and you race well in these conditions, then it's fine, the decision has worked out well. If either of them go out and struggle in a wet race, then you think, why didn't you go out and warm? And it's a real catch-22. You don't want to go out and have a problem. You don't want to go out and have a crash. You don't want to go out and lose your confidence, like Remy running off in turn 1. That could have ended up a little bit differently for him. So you don't want that kind of situation, but you also need to get some miles in.
You do indeed, and Michael van der Mark, we have seen him very strong in wet conditions in the past. Picked up victory in Magny-Cours last year in the wet conditions when Toprak was out of action. Looking at Andrea Locatelli, 2 podiums from the last 4 races, and we spoke to Nicolo Canepa on Friday, and he was not too confident that they could repeat the Portimao result from race number 1 there, but very strong showing from Andrea Locatelli, and a rider that just seems to have grown into the lead rider within the team now that Jonathan Ray's been out of action for the last couple of rounds.
Yeah, he's grown into it. He knows it's time to really step up as well. World Supersport champion for Yamaha. He's been on the bike for a long time. What's he going to do for the future? Is he going to be Yamaha's team leader if Johnny leaves? Is he the guy that Yamaha can really trust? How can he turn where he is right now into a bigger contract for next year, a better opportunity for next year? And Locke has been able to do that in Portimao, and here he's had back-to-back rounds of podiums. He's been able to show an improvement, and the upgrades that Yamaha have made to the bike, changing the chassis flex, it's clearly helped them a lot. They've been able to make the step forward that they needed, and it's a little bit like what BMW did last year. It's giving you that little bit more feel, that little bit more confidence. Look at Toprak now compared to a year ago. They've taken away that little bit of extra flex, and suddenly the confidence is gone. World Superbikes hinges on a 1/10 of a second a lap now, so if you've got that extra confidence to find that 1/10 of a second, suddenly you qualify an extra row up the grid, you're a little bit more comfortable in the races, and you're able to battle at the front.
Ryan Vickers here, showing some confidence in the wet conditions this morning. 4th place for the British star, only his 3rd round in World Superbikes, coming from British Superbikes last year, and well, a rider that's really used to the British weather, and we've got a lot of that going on this morning. And Sam Lowe's here on screen, just bedding himself in this morning with 1.5 minutes remaining, and Sam Lowe's coming across the line. Hugh goes up to 2nd, so they're still chasing down Scott Redding, who continues to set red sectors out there. 1.4 seconds is Redding faster than the rest of the riders, and it was quite interesting you mentioned about Michael van der Mark, Scott Redding. They're big in stature, and that might just help generate heat into the tyres a little bit quickly in these cold conditions.
Yeah, it helps generate a bit of load, but more than anything else, you don't have to lean the bike over as much. You've got longer levers to be able to get your knee down and feel what the ground's doing. Obviously for the riders, you see the
of the season on course to taking the championship later on. So Sam Lowe's powers out of the final chicane, checkered flag is waving, and Sam Lowe's on course to take top honours here in warm-up, but Scott Redding a little bit further behind. But really interesting what we see about Ducati. they are showing themselves really well in dry and wet conditions, which is ominous.
Yeah, we'll see what Buliga can do in his final lap. Locatelli as well, we catch up with the 55, and just good to be able to see that confidence building for Sam on the number 14 bike. Locke's got his confidence as well. We'll see if he's able to move to the top of the timesheets, and Buliga still to finish off his session. But for those riders, the one thing is they know that they've got that bit of confidence, they know they've got the feel, and that'll give them a little bit of a boost if we end up with the wet conditions for the Super Pole race. Locke goes fastest by 1/10 of a second. We're only 12 or 13 seconds off of dry weather time, so it does show even in these wet conditions just how much grip there is out there on the TT circuit, Aston.
Incredible stuff from Locatelli. Fast in the wet, fast in the dry, but what can Nico Buliga do here? We're topping the session once again. So they're still chasing the number 11 here at the TT circuit, Assen, and he goes up half a second quicker than the rest of the riders. So maybe for Buliga, he knows the circuit conditions well, and here comes Jason O'Halloran, who knows conditions really well. He goes 10th, so a good showing from the Yamaha.
Yeah, he's been up in the top 10 or thereabouts all the way through this session, so that's good from Jason, and it gives him a little bit of a confidence lift as well. Wet conditions for the Super Pole race, he might be able to come through. Very difficult to get into the top 9, but for O'Halloran, at least he might be able to show a little bit more than what we've been able to see from him in the dry conditions.
It'd be good to see Scott Redding third in the warm-up session this morning, and that will give him great confidence and great boost for potential the Super Pole race. Hasn't won a race since 2021. Race number 1 at San Juan. That was quite a long time ago for Scott Redding, and with a great session already this morning, he might be quite confident that he could add to that win total. Here's Andrea Locatelli, second in race 1 yesterday, and continuing his second place. I think he's getting a little bit fed up with them, as he said to us yesterday. It's not quite the win, but you feel like they're maybe continuing to chip away ever so slightly at Yamaha.
Yeah, for Locatelli, he's always been very consistent for Yamaha, and we'll just have to
get 20 podiums.
20 podiums for them. He's a very solid, dependable rider. He just needs that little bit of luck to pick up a race with. Maybe the wet conditions give him that, but it's one of those situations where he's shown himself to be a very good superbike rider over the last 3 or 4 years, and now he just needs that opportunity to pick up a race victory.
Yes, but they've all got to topple Nicolo Buliga on the 11 Aruba Ducati. Fastest all weekend, fastest yesterday, race win yesterday, and of course topping morning warm-up in the wet conditions. Doesn't matter what you throw at Nicolo Buliga, he can just soak it all up, and he takes it in his stride as he tops morning warm-up. From Andrea Locatelli, half a second quicker he was than his fellow countrymen. Scott Redding, Sam Lowes, Jair Montella showing really well up inside the top 5 ahead of his teammate Danilo Petrucci. Alex Lowes finding his way in the wet in the Bimota, he was in 7th. And further down, struggling in the wet conditions, you see Alvaro Bautista, Garrett Gerloff, a rider we usually see going quite well in these wet conditions. Taron McKenzie, he picked up some important points after a slow start to the race yesterday. He was in 16th, and the riders that didn't venture out, Zach Wanzeri, Badis Sifoglu, Michael van der Mark, and top that, Raz Gaglioglu. And you see the lap summary here. Just see that with each passing lap, Nicolo Buliga was just gaining confidence a little bit. The 1 minute 50s were probably just laps he came up behind a couple of slow riders. Same with Andrea Locatelli, only ventured out for 3 flying laps, but took chunks out of his time each time. 1.9 seconds between each run. And then Scott Redding consistently found the pace. He found it much quicker than the rest of the riders, while the rest just caught up to him ever so slightly and came out with a 1:45.7. So that is warm-up done and dusted, and now that means the next time we will see you, it will be lights out for the Super Pole race. Will it be wet or will it be dry? Join us at 11 AM local time to find out.